is on the topic, a framework for mitigating cybercrime in organizations. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Priyank Kothari, who is Head of Information Security, Risk and Compliance at Tesco. Giving a brief introduction, Mr. Priyank brings together around 19 plus years of hands-on risk management experience covering enterprise risk, data security and privacy, business resilience, supplier risk and compliance domains. He is currently working as Head Information Security, Risk and Compliance for Tesco Global Business Services, leading global risk and compliance team and Risk and Audit Center of Excellence for the business. With this, please welcome Mr. Priyank with a huge round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Very, very good morning. Absolutely delighted to be part of this forum and to be part of this eminent group. Also, a big thanks to UBS Forum for giving me this opportunity to just be part of this forum, learn and share, and present as part of the CISO Conclave 2022. The topic that I have been given is the slide up? Yeah. Topic that I have been given is cybercrime, which I'm sure always makes for a sort of an interesting conversation. I'm sure all of you would agree with me that it's a growing concern globally and in India. And as per Interpol, it is one of the fastest growing crime categories among different crimes that they sort of monitor across the globe. So let's add a little more sort of context and color to it in terms of why that's the case. So if you look at the overall ecosystem in which we are operating today, and here are some real hard numbers. It depends upon who's looking at this number. So for an example, if a consumer is looking at this number, he will see a thriving consumer economy and a lot of choices for him. If you will show this numbers to a startup, they will say, wow, it's a growing digital economy and a lot of opportunities for them. But if you show the same numbers to a cyber criminal, he will be like, wow, it's a absolutely the place to be. I need to exploit this sort of thriving, digital economy for my sort of purposes. So it's really, based on how, people interpret the data point. Another key factor to note is irrespective whether it's a growing economy or a developed economy, you will see this almost like two sides of the same coin, where cybercrime is seen vis-a-vis, the growing digital economy of the country. And no wonder India and US are among the top 5 countries when it comes to being victims of the cybercrime. Also, we need to also see it in the context of why it's really a big challenge when it comes to managing cybercrime. If you look at the entire scale and the pace of the adoption and innovation that is happening in this space, it becomes extremely difficult for be it organizations to really deal with from a control standpoint, that how do we really mitigate the risk pertaining to cybercrime. And which also means that the adoption and the velocity of the change really leaves consumers really wondering what is the level of understanding they have from a cyber risk standpoint, and also the kind of best practices that they can adopt when it comes to managing when they are using any devices as part of the digital economy. So that's really the challenge that we have today. And as we move forward, I will be talking about some of the different measures that we can take and as part of when we are building the framework of dealing with the cybercrime. But I am very, very conscious that this is a group of CISOs. We have the security experts here, and I'm not going to cover some of the hygiene security controls, which I'm sure all of you have. And yes, they are an integral part of your framework, what you have when it comes to dealing with cybercrime. what I'm going to focus on some other important considerations which I think are really important for us to really take into account as we prepare ourselves in safeguarding our organizations against cybercrime. So that's what I will be covering today. So one of the first consideration is cybercrime is much more than data security. You know, if you have to really understand, you need to look at the entire landscape of cybercrime. It covers, it is no more about or only limited to phishing or ransomware or hacking, which we often hear when we manage security as part of our organizations. So in the context of the entire landscape of the cybercrime, what we see today, it becomes extremely difficult. If we go back to our own organizations as well, how many of us have these conversations on cybercrime as part of our day-to-day role? Do we have response strategies when it comes to dealing with the entire gamut of cybercrime? Or do we, even our awareness programs today, do they cover these sort of areas as part of the training content what we have? And you will see that there are number of gaps that we may have in terms of how we are approaching from an organization perspective these broader set of areas which are covered as part of cybercrime. Additionally, if we are really serious about preparing for this, we need to understand that we need a very coordinated approach where multiple stakeholders across the organization need to be part of that if we really have to create a response strategy for dealing with these broader set of cybercrimes. And at the same time, creating awareness would be the key to really take colleagues along when we are really creating a response for the cybercrimes today. The second key consideration, I think we all will acknowledge again and recognize that personal data is at the heart of a digital economy. It forms part of the digital identity that we use to transact as part of the digital world we operate in. Unless we have really the right set of controls to protect this personal data, we will stand exposed. There was a recent survey which shows the extent of the problem in India, wherein 59% of the loan consumers in India feel that their data has been shared in an unauthorized way, and they get sort of unsolicited calls from different alternate loan providers as well. And this shows the extent of the problem what we have today. So if we really are serious about building capability and response for the cybercrime, and we know that this personal data breaches or identity theft will form the critical part of or maybe one of the top priorities for the cyber criminals as part of when they are exploiting this. We need to have controls which are beyond security controls. Security controls alone cannot safeguard ourselves when it comes to managing cyber crimes. We need a framework which embraces privacy culture. We need a framework which embeds privacy principles and protects user rights. Unless we have very strong oversight on how personal data is being processed, consumed, shared, stored and deleted, will not be able to really control the extent to which this personal data can be misused in an unauthorized way today. And that really is going to be at the heart of one of the key considerations when you're really developing a core capability or a framework to respond to cyber crimes. I think, world beyond your enterprise boundaries. I think when we talk about cybercrime, we think of jurisdiction, we think about laws that we have or regulations that we have. We think about our ability to investigate, to be able to evidence in case of a cybercrime, or have the right set of monitoring controls. However, in the world that is post-COVID sort of world, we all know that today employees can work from anywhere in any part of the world. They may be using any device, either corporate, there can be multiple devices or personal device. And we also know that they could be connecting over any network, be it home network or public network, hotel network, whatever, wherever they are. which also exposes the challenges that we have today when it comes to really enforcing controls and our ability to really investigate and respond to these sort of cybercrime incidents. And so that's the reality, that if we have to really build a framework and a control environment, we need to take into account how we really, encompass the control environment, the response strategies, taking into account this post sort of COVID world, which is a hybrid working world, and build a strategy which is in line with the new ways of working that businesses have adopted today. And lastly, I think as security experts, we understand our domain, which is the security domain. We understand what controls we have or we need to have when it comes to from a security perspective. But we also need to recognize that we are operating in a complex sort of legal and regulatory sort of environment. And when it comes to cybercrime, the understanding of laws of the land or regulations becomes paramount. And this is where partnership with legal is extremely key for us to really, engage and partner together to build a strategy, whether it is in terms of controls, in terms of policy interventions, so that it can stand the scrutiny of law, that you are able to defend yourself, if it requires to be, in terms of engagement with regulators or in case of any investigations. And this is where I think that it is really, really important. And there could be different areas of collaboration as well in terms of when you are developing your investigation policy, or how you are going to manage forensics or chain of custody. If you are coming up with employee monitoring policy or controls, if you are looking at some of the privacy and contractual risks that you need to have as part of different contracts as part of your role. So, or new regulations like data protection law, which we all know that the draft has been released last week, and which again will require joint collaboration and working together along with the legal team. And this is where I think it is extremely key if you are really thinking from the lines of cybercrime, and we know it is always about unlawful activity. We are talking about as a reference to the law, as a reference to a regulation. And it becomes really, really important that you have a strong partnership with your legal teams on any areas or interventions that you are making to safeguard yourself against, cyber or cyber crimes, so to speak. So broadly, these were the 4 key things that played on my mind, apart from because the entire space is about security controls, and I think this group is very well informed and aware, and I'm sure taking all the necessary, hygiene from a control standpoint. But I really thought that these are some of the key considerations that we should keep in mind when we are really moving forward in the broader context of cybercrime and building our capability or programs to be able to respond to these areas. And lastly, just to reflect in terms of my own sort of experience and conversations, I still sort of strongly feel that as organizations we have relegated the entire space of cybercrime to government machinery. We have left it to employees to manage a lot of responses, and the challenges that they deal in terms of cybercrimes to manage in their own capacity. And I think as leaders of, as security leaders and leaders within our organization, we all can play a very important role to bring it a little more to the forefront, the broader understanding of cybercrimes, the risks associated with it, and drive a healthy conversation both in terms of awareness and what as an organization that we can do to really build a strong sort of response to the cybercrimes, thereby safeguarding both ourselves and our organizations against the risks of cybercrime. So thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure to be part of this forum. Happy to have any questions here.
Yes, sir.
Morning again. Rohimuddin from 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏. So basically, as you've spoken about the framework, rather than just just security aspect. One of our client, which is a bank, actually the issue was with respect to an unintentional, attack because of mistakes done by the employee in the organization rather than a security risk from outside. So do you have any framework? The sort of what I understand from last three speakers that we're at a stage that probably there is a framework as such is not yet, derived, or it is in the process. So can you share some light if you, feel that this is the way to go?
See, so there are broadly, just in my view, there are two parts to this. One is compliance to your own internal policies and breach of those policies, which could be, what it sounded like more of an accidental, sort of action which led to the breach, and also then compliance to the regulation and breach against the laws and regulations. Or let's say if it was a bank, there could be RBI guidelines and mandate in terms of reporting. Or if it led to breach of personal data, then there could be an, I don't know whether it was a local or a global organization, then GDPR and other, sort of laws will come into play. So when we look at the framework, we need to take both things into account. But when we really call it cyber crime, it is against the laws of the land or against the regulation. And that's where we need to draw the distinction in terms of you may be able to take an action move from your internal policy standpoint, but whether it is also leading to a breach of any laws or regulation, and that's when it will form or fall under the category of cybercrime. Even today, when I was looking at some of the data for this presentation, we looked at some of the numbers here. 700 million mobile consumers, digital devices, IoT 2 billion and sort of devices. But numbers for this year are 50,000, which has been actually reported cybercrime incidents. Another interesting statistics which came across was since 2008, only 2 convictions have happened in Chandigarh as a place since 2008, and this is 2022 data. So this shows the extent of the problem. This shows we are at a place where while we may sort of complain that we do not have the right data for India, but there is neither reporting as well, and the lack of awareness is significantly low, both as a citizens and as employees, where I think, I don't know how many of times we have really gone to a government portal and logged a, sort of cybercrime incident and worked with them. So I think that's a challenge that we need to sort of navigate through, but framework needs to account for both local as well as your global mandates that you may have here. Hope this helps.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you so much. Please give him a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
And